In this lesson, we're going to be looking at hide and show, and these are some of the basic effects that we've already seen, but there's actually even more you can do with them. So let's first go back into here, and I'm also going to wrap that whole thing. So I've wrapped it in an ID called wrapper, and let's save that. Go over to our JS file, and let's go ahead and save this as number 26. So there we go, get rid of the code that's in there. That's from the previous lesson. So the first thing that I wanted to do is I actually want to do something with this highlight. I want to apply some CSS to it. So we've worked with CSS for quite a bit, so you should be fairly familiar with just different ways of applying CSS. So we can do background color. I'm going to do it within the JSON format. So do red and comma separated out. Let's add in some padding. I do 10 pics of padding. So always have to quote around there. So just always remember to do that. And also let's do some margin around it as well. So do 5-pic margin. And let's also do a border. So we'll do 1-pic solid black border, or make it a really light color. So just do DDD. So there we go. So let's try that out. So now we've got a bunch of elements there, so they're more visible. And let's also now let's apply hide to it. So what I want to do is when it gets clicked, I want to do hide to it. Is clicked. So we're familiar with that one as well. We've gone over that several times, that we've got whenever the click happens, then we can fire off some type of function. So let's set up that function as well. So this time we're going to do a very slow hide of that element. And of course we can select any element we want. Because again, remember with selectors in jQuery, we're open to grab whatever one we want. So far we've seen that we've got the ability to just hide it. That's all we've been able to do so far. But in this case, we're actually even able to do a little bit more. So what we can do is we can do it at a slower pace. So we have an option to set the speed. We can also set the speed, the duration, so it can be a number as well. So the default is 400. So we can option by setting it to slow. We also have the option between a number or a string. And then we have another interesting thing here is we can actually fire off a function. So this is a callback that fires off when this is complete. So that's a really nice one, that we can do something. We can fire off this function. So this is what's going to happen whenever the hide has completed. So maybe what we want to do is we want to grab this and grab next and apply some CSS to that. So we're gonna just do the background color. So always pick on that background color. And here, let's turn the background color blue. So let's see what happens. Refresh, and we click it, and we see the next one goes blue. So actually that was fast. So slow would be incrementing the amount of time that it's taking to do that. So we can see that that's already slower. We can even go to 5,000 milliseconds, so that's 5 seconds. So that's super slow, and we can see that whole animation. And the other really neat thing is that when you do within here, within the selectors, so I'm going to inspect that one and watch what happens to the CSS. And we can see that it's adjusting the padding, it's adjusting the height. So it is all the way down until it does display none. So that's a really nice, neat effect with it, that with jQuery, remember again that it is manipulating that style attribute. And just like we're able to do that with hide, we can also do it with show. So maybe what we want to do is whenever we click this here, so remember that we had that element that we could select. And the class was SCL. and let's do it on change. So whenever it changes, we're going to fire off a function here, and we're going to show all those highlight elements that have the highlight class. And that should have a dot in front of it. And we're going to show them all. And then here we also have a similar type method that we can do either slow, or we can do it fast, or we could set a default millisecond value. So let's do 500, and this will bring them all back. And we'll also do a callback function, and this time again we're going to grab all of the highlight, and we're going to update the CSS to all of them. So we'll reset the background color to red. So that if we change anything over there, that should update and bring us back. And see, they can work synchronously as well. So we can see they're all kind of working together. So it's kind of a neat thing. And now if I change this, they all come back. And they all come back with that same thing. We could also be even more advanced, where we could grab the value of this that changed it, and we can add that in here. So maybe pause the video and add that in. I'll show you how to do that. So remember from the previous lesson, we could get the value of this. So whatever is selecting that trigger. So if I want to change them all to green. And actually, do you know what happened there? That why it didn't work? Because we've got this, and this is actually applying to the highlight element because we're in the child of the parent. So the parent is the actually SEL. So we need to specify it there as well. So sometimes it does get a little bit tricky. So we can go ahead and hide them again. And let's go back out, turn them all green, show them all once again. So this is just so a bunch of neat effects that you can do here. And as you can see, that input is working, and can go ahead and we can hide them all off, turn them all green, turn them all red, whatever we want to do. We've got full control thanks to jQuery. Also within jQuery for events, we have hide, we have show, and we also have toggle. So this time I'm going to grab that H1 tag, so the welcome to jQuery course tag, and I'm going to toggle. Now this one doesn't have any options to make it fast or slow. So if you do want those fast or slow options, you've got to use hide and show. Toggle is just plain old toggle, so there's no parameters in there. So now when I click, it's going to hide it, it's going to show it. So whatever the state of it is, it's going to actually revert it out to the opposite. And then let's bring all of them back, of course, with that earlier on change method. So what I want you to do now is to explore this a little bit more. Open up your editor, have some fun with it. Remember, you can do these callback functions. So after this has been triggered, then you can do something once the trigger completes. So go ahead and try that out. Add some nice, interesting effects from what you've learned in the earlier lessons, applying some CSS, grabbing an element. You can also have one element that updates and so on. So you can do a lot of really cool things here. Go ahead, have some fun with it, try it out. And in the next course, we're going to be showing you even more that you can do with jQuery. Welcome back, and congratulations on making it this far, because things are going to get more and more interesting. As in the last lesson, we learned some of the really cool things that we can do with jQuery because we have some options for hiding and showing. So this lesson, we're going to be working with content, adding in content. So I've updated the lesson number. Let's go over to the lesson, and we'll hide that menu, and we can just clear this part out, and let's save it as lesson 27. So source code for lesson 27, that's the one that we're going to be working with within this one. So we want to be able to append and update content. So we're going to be defaulting back to our clicked. So again, back to the click option, so click event. So whenever the particular element gets clicked with the class of highlight, then we want to do something to it. So let's add some content to the element. So we know that we can use this to select the current one, or the one that fired off the event, and I'm going to just add clicked to it. And we're also going to bring back our counter, because that was kind of neat where we had a counter every time it clicked so we could have different values and different results. So I'm going to add in the counter value there, and I'm going to update the counter value by 1 every time it gets clicked. So let's see what happens. Refresh the page, and we can see clicked 1, clicked 2, clicked 3, and it keeps continuously appending that content. If we go to the inspector, let's take a closer look at our HTML, and we can see that whatever we've clicked here, so when we go over to our element, it's adding in content. So it's still within that div. And that's important to note because there's different ways, and you've got even more control with jQuery where you're placing these elements. So original content was welcome to jQuery 5, and every time I clicked, it continued to append content after whatever content was available within that element that fired it off. So now when I'm clicking it, it's actually this whole element is firing off that event, and it's simply just grabbing and applying more and more of the HTML that we've added there, and it's going to continue to append it into the HTML. You can see that it continues to add and add and add it. So all within that same div. So important to note that. There's also another action that we can do, so we can prepend it. So let me show you how prepend looks. So we don't have to create another click event. We'll just do it within the same one. We'll call it prepend, or we'll just call it pre. And let's add that one in. So refresh. So this one, whenever we click it, it's going to add it before and after that element. So let's take a look at our HTML, open that one up, and we're able to add in content before and afterwards. And if I continue to click it, we can see that we're continuously adding content before it. So maybe adding in that counter might make sense at this point as well, so we can see which click actually initiated. So it should start with the center one and then continuously add it before. So one more time, let's click it a bunch of times, open it up, and we see that this was that original content. And then the first time we clicked it, we added a pre and an append before and after, pre, append, before and after, and so on. So what I want you to do now, try this out for yourself. Open up your editor, add some content before an element, and also add some content after an element, but keep it within that same main container of the element. So just as we have it in the div, just watch how it comes into that content. In the next lesson, we're going to be extending this and showing you even more cool things that you can do with it. So that's coming up in the next lesson. So you're in for a treat for this lesson because we're going to be showing you before and after, and we're going to be discussing what the difference is between append and prepend. Because initially it sounds like the same thing, so that you think that whenever we're clicking it and we want to add something before this, so just use this again, and we've got an option in jQuery, so before method, and there is actually a difference between before and prepend. So let's do before. And we'll also add in the counter here. So this counter is coming in super useful. So let me show you what happens now. So what do you think before is going to do? It's very similar to prepend when we're looking at the actual meaning of the word. So we click it, and we see that before is popping up all over here, which is really interesting. And whenever we go over to the code and we look at welcome to we got to go down to welcome to jQuery. Oh, there it is. Welcome to jQuery 5. We see that the prepends are still within that same element, but the befores are popping up before the element. And the other interesting thing about it is, notice the order here. So whenever we're prepending, we've got, let me click it again. And whenever we're prepending, we're working with that original element content, and we're pasting something before it. So when we're doing before, then what it's actually doing is it's counting all of this content as before. So it's counting that div, and it's just simply placing it before, so shifting these ones up. So let's try one more, and the other one is after. So we'll do the same, this element, and this time let's do after. So after obviously is going to work a lot like before, but as expected, it should drop it in after the div instead of within the div. And that's the difference of it. So you've got a lot of control where you place this content, and you see that the order of where it's being placed, that's also an important thing to note there. So going back up to those divs, that's down at these divs here, and we were clicking this one here. So we were clicking element number 6, and we were seeing that the befores are above there. And what do you think the after, exactly right after element 6, we see that's after 4. So whenever we click it, next is after 5 and next is after 6. Because again, it's taking that whole element and it's counting that as this element. So what's happening here is that we're simply appending it before and after. So now it's up to you to make updates to an element. So not the one that's being clicked, but let's update something else with the counter value. So what I want you to do is to grab the H1, and every time we click it, let's add a number pre the value there. So in front of welcome, but still within the H1 tags. And then add another number that's going to be outside of those H1 tags before it as well. So go ahead and try that out, and I'll show you the solution coming up. So let's grab that H1. So just as we've done before, we're going to apply a selector, and let's do the function on it. And we said that we wanted to have this counter before it. So we can set up another counter, or we could just use the current one that we have. And we want to add some content still within the H1 before it. So we can do it to this, or we could specify the H1. So in this case, it doesn't matter, but if you're having an element that's being clicked outside, then you definitely want to make sure that you're applying this to the right selection, making the right selection process. So we want it to do one that is prepend. So we use the prepend method. And in this case, we simply just want it to do counter. And we also, so that one is the one that's not going to be in the H1. And then this one, so again, we could use the H1. So simulate that we're selecting an element, not the one that's clicked. So it doesn't really matter. We can have a number of different ways that we can select it. And for this instance, let's just do B's so we can distinguish between the two. So this one is actually going to be sitting outside. So we'll do B plus counter. So it'll be sitting outside, but still incrementing there. So let's try it out. So we've got our B1 there. So that one is sitting outside, and as expected, the prepend is still within the element. And that's the difference between prepend before, append, and after. So try it out for yourself. Open up your editor and try it out for yourself. Prepending, appending before and after elements with some content.